The liberal media meltdown has reached a critical mass, from John Oliver ranting and screaming and apparently breaking a federal law to Stephen Gopere starting a freaking group therapy session as he's near tears. Also, you got the ladies of The View renting their clothing and weeping over the idea of Donald Trump debating Joe Biden. Biden must be protected at all costs. And then Jessica Tarlov. Oh, it's cathartic. Have you ever wanted to jump on the set of The Five and tell off Jessica Tarlov? Well, Greg Gutfeld sort of did it for you with an assist from Jesse Waters. We've got that, and transgender men wanting to breastfeed their daughters. Or no, wait. Men, transgender women wanting to breastfeed their son. No. Guys want babies to suckle on their nipples. We'll tell you all about it. Coming up right now, I'm Larry O'Connor. Call me Larry. I'm sorry, I just can't keep that stuff straight. The transgender man, it's a man. It's a man, but he's presenting as a woman breastfeeding. So that's a transgender woman, but it's not a woman. And so that's why you don't want to use the word. We'll get to that a little bit later in the program. We're live right now. It's noontime Eastern, and we're all over Rumble, baby. So come and rumble with us. Join us every single day here as we are live and for your viewing and listening pleasure. Otherwise, subscribe and like anywhere you're watching us right now or listening on our podcast as well. Thanks for being a part of what we're doing here. Let's get right to it with John Oliver. You know, I don't have a whole lot of respect for John Oliver, considering the fact that he's making millions from HBO, basically imitating what Jon Stewart invented about 15 years ago. And if you think about it, he only has to do this once a week, not daily like Jon Stewart did back in the day. He's got a team of writers around him. All he has to do is put together one basically extended version of Weekend Update, and he rakes in the bucks. So his political maniacal anger at anyone who doesn't agree with him politically, you know, being a man of the left, bubbled up over into federal crimes this weekend as he attempted to bribe not just a public official, not just a federal judge, a Supreme Court justice. Take a look.
We are excited to offer you this brand new top-of-the-line Prevost Marathon motor coach.
So this is addressed directly to Clarence Thomas, who famously likes to take RV vacations across the country with his wife, Ginny. There's a lot of famous viral pictures of Clarence Thomas and his wife, Ginny, just at an RV park, just chilling out, fishing, you know, rolling in, camping, then rolling out and moving on to the next town. He actually enjoys seeing America, the country that he was born in, lives in, and loves. And here's John Oliver making fun of him about that. You heard that little dig at regular people, you know, because John Oliver would never find himself in an RV. That's for those kind of people. The regular people, by the way, who all support and love Clarence Thomas for what he does on the Supreme Court, what he stands for, and what he believes in, the kind of people that John Oliver would never catch himself spending any kind of time with. That's who he's talking about. And, well, he's basically trying to coax Clarence Thomas into retirement by giving him this beautiful RV.
So that's the offer. $1 million a year, Clarence, and a brand new condo on wheels. And all you have to do in return is sign the contract and get the off the Supreme Court. How is this legal?
Well, it's actually not legal, John. That's the surprise that you're in store for. In fact, John Oliver, what you just saw, what you just witnessed, was breaking federal law. Yeah, in fact, specifically, the 18 U.S. Code stroke 201, Title 18, Crimes and Criminal Procedures, Bribery of Public Officials and Witnesses. And yeah, that includes judges as well. And it doesn't have to be a successful bribe. No, it's actually just, you know, an attempted bribe. That's what you just saw. And I'm sure it's just a joke, of course. It doesn't matter. But doesn't it? I mean, for instance, when Donald Trump obviously jokingly said to the Russians, hey, if you've got Hillary's emails, why don't you release them for all of us so we can see them? Now, he was joking, but that actually became part of James Comey's FBI investigation into the presidential candidate. So last I checked, even if you're just obviously joking, if you break the law, you break the law. Also, and I know this is going to sound xenophobic, and I know that it's going to sound a little too MAGA fascist for some people watching. And I know that John Oliver is a newly naturalized United States citizen. And congratulations, John. But boy, oh boy, there is something really, really fundamentally irritating hearing someone with a foreign accent lecturing the rest of us about America. There's something very irritating knowing that this person is here as part of our generosity and our large S that he's able to achieve at such a high level and make so much money, and then lecturing us about everything that we're doing wrong as a country in his very thick foreign accent. You know, it's like when Piers Morgan had his primetime show on CNN and then got in debates with Ben Shapiro over the Second Amendment. When Piers Morgan, with his British accent and his British citizenship, would come on primetime cable news in America and tell us how evil we are for our constitutional rights, it really rubs you the wrong way, doesn't it? I know it rubs me the wrong way. The good news here, I'm guessing Clarence Thomas actually probably found this funny. Not just because he's got a great sense of humor. And if you ask anybody who's worked with him or knows him, they'll tell you that. He has an infectious laugh as well. But also, I think he loves the fact that after everything that he's been through, after the lies that have been told about him, about the racist tropes that have been trotted out against him, he still lives rent-free in these minuscule little minds of John Oliver and the like. Do you think $1 million a year in a beautiful luxury RV is going to get him to step down from a position where he now drives the intellectual heft of the United States Supreme Court, shaping constitutional law for generations to come? I promise you he won't. Here, he's addressed this, in fact, recently at a forum that C-SPAN broadcasts. Watch.
One of the things I say in response to the media is when they talk about, or especially early on, about the way I did my job, I said, I will absolutely leave the court when I do my job as poorly as you do yours. And that was meant as a compliment, really.
Oh, I love that laugh from Clarence Thomas. And that is exactly who he is. And I bet you that's exactly how he approaches this full-on assault against him, his dignity, and his ethics. Because that's really what this is. That entire thing there, if you're reading between the lines, and it was about as subtle as an elephant's appendage, John Oliver is basically saying that Clarence Thomas is corrupt and that he's getting payoff from CEOs and corporate raiders and what did he call them? People in Hitler mansions or something like that. That he's getting payoffs from them to basically craft American jurisprudence on their behalf. And so now here's John Oliver with a better offer. See, the whole joke here is not that John Oliver is trying to bribe Clarence Thomas to get him off the bench to save America. No, the joke here is that Clarence Thomas is corrupt and has no ethics, when he has more principles in his little finger than John Oliver. Well, John Oliver's about the size of a little finger, so I guess that's not a good comparison. Stephen Colbert, on the other hand, the other night had a literal breakdown. I thought he was near tears. So frustrated and angry that Donald Trump is doing better than Joe Biden in the polls. Watch this. And as you're watching, remind yourself, if you could, that this is a late night comedy show and this is a comedian delivering a monologue of jokes.
I know how numb we've become, but it's not normal. No other candidate for the presidency has ever had to pause his campaign to defend himself in multiple courts. And I would like to point out that in all 7 of his cases, no one doubts that he did these things. We're just sitting around patiently waiting to find out if the wheels of justice will grind fast enough for there to be any consequences. Like it's all horse race. But in this horse race, one of the horses is old. Well, one of the horses is old, has hoof and mouth disease, and keeps quoting horse Hitler.
I mean, serious, that's not normal for somebody's voice to be breaking like that in such an emotional fit. I do love that this is the new narrative, by the way, of the left. This is not normal. This is horrible. No presidential candidate has ever had to face down 91 federal felony charges while he's in the middle of a campaign. Yeah, you know what? There's another way of looking at that. No presidential candidate has ever been attacked through legal means like this from a sitting president. No presidential candidate has ever been attacked by a Justice Department trying to keep him off the ballot by literally creating new laws and new interpretations of the law. The law in New York never been applied the way it's being applied to Donald Trump. The lie on classified documents literally was just applied differently to Joe Biden than it is with Donald Trump, with the Mar-a-Lago document raid. The law on insurrection that Jack Smith is trying to employ has never been employed in the way it is being employed against Donald Trump. The law, the racketeering charges down in Atlanta, that has never been brought before the way that she is bringing them. You're right, Stephen Colbert, completely unprecedented because of the prosecutors. They're the ones who were acting in an unprecedented way. You don't think Hillary Clinton could have been charged with crimes? But somehow there was reasonable judicial circumspect and discipline. The entire meltdown of late night comics is being satirized beautifully by a comedian, and his name is Lou Perez. He's got a book out. I want to promote it here for you. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. And here, take a look. He's got a glimpse into the writer's room of one of these late night shows.
Have you considered telling actual jokes instead of just reciting Trump's tweets?
Where the hell am I supposed to get jokes?
Don't you have a writing staff?
We have the most diverse writing staff in television.
Well, there you go. Have them write some jokes for you.
They're diverse, not funny. Unless you consider them hilariously diverse.
Okay, Howie, you used to be a funny guy. I remember you making me laugh years ago. What happened to you?
I got tired. Being funny is hard. It's a lot easier being brave.
You see, and that actually is funny because it's truthful and it's actually rooted in fact. And that's what makes satire so great. That's funnier than anything you're seeing on any of the late night comedy shows right now on a daily basis. But what is funny is the fact that they're just absolutely melting down. They can't stand the fact that with everything they've thrown at Donald Trump over the last 7-8 years now, he's actually leading in the national polls and he's leading in every single battleground poll. And he's poised to be the president again because he's running against a man who has mashed potato for brains, which leads us to the debate over the debates. As you know, Joe Biden is incapable of actually defending himself against charges in a courtroom. That's what the special prosecutor determined in his classified documents case. Joe Biden is incapable for sitting for 10 minutes for a live interview during halftime at the Super Bowl. Joe Biden is incapable of conducting a press conference, and he's incapable of actually participating in an interview without having cards with not just handwritten notes and answers, but in some cases, the pre-approved handwritten questions so he knows what's coming. He's incapable of walking up the short stairs of Air Force One without a Secret Service agent there to catch him should he fall. And he's incapable of carrying on a basic conversation without confusing the country of Egypt with the country of Mexico. So the game plan going forward is to do whatever they can to keep him from debating Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as we told you 2 weeks ago, threw down the gauntlet and challenged Joe Biden to debates. In fact, he said he's ready to debate right now. Well, over at The View, the ladies are doing their job in making sure that that never happens. Take a listen to the scenario they're laying out.
I just, I don't think I need to see someone who has been twice impeached and is a disgrace and a one-term president with 91 counts facing him. I think it legitimizes him. I don't need to be gaslit by Trump. We all know who he is. We all know what he stands for. We also know that Biden debated him twice and just sort of mopped the floor with him. If you look at any of the studies, most Americans that watched it thought that Biden won, not only on policy, but on demeanor, especially. Does this person have the temperament to be the president? We know who Donald Trump is. I don't think you give him that type of platform.
But also, if Biden flubs, they'll be all over him. If Trump flubs,
if he doesn't show up, they'll be all over him. But here's the thing. A lot has happened since 2020. January 6th hadn't happened. Donald Trump needs to have to stand next to Joe Biden, and Joe Biden needs to call him out on the unfitness, because the reality is we all at this table,
He's going to say he had nothing to do with it.
We all know who Donald Trump is. Nearly 80 million people voted for him. They need to see the juxtaposition of the two leaders and decide on the
Oh, there's a whole lot to unpack here. First of all, Sonny Hostin with it. We don't need to legitimize Donald Trump by letting him on the debate stage with Joe Biden. We don't want to platform Donald Trump. This is so typical of how the left views you. Can I just help you out here, Sonny Hostin? You and your friends in the media at ABC News or any of the networks, you elites in Manhattan, you're not legitimizing or platforming Donald Trump by deigning to allow him to share the stage with Joe Biden. No, the voters have legitimized Donald Trump. The Republican Party is having a primary caucus process. Republican voters are deciding who's going to be standing on that stage, representing them. This isn't about Donald Trump, as usual. This is about you. All of the venom and hate and disregard and disdain and condescension that you see from Sonny Hostin and Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg about Donald Trump, it's actually about you. You see, you're the one Republican voter who has legitimized Donald Trump. You know everything that they're saying about him. You know all the charges that have put up against him. And you have said, this is the man I want to represent me. And these women cannot stand it. They hate it. And so then they take on the role of being the ones who would legitimize Donald Trump. It's up to Sonny Hostin to decide who is legitimized on the national stage. I don't think so, dear. We have a process here. Donald Trump played in that process. He's winning the nomination. He's going to win the nomination. And that's how it goes. And now afterwards, they're just trying to protect Joe Biden by saying, well, we shouldn't legitimize him with a place on the stage. So there's that. Also, I love Alyssa Farah from so-called conservative position on the table, galloping in and saying, well, no, because a lot has happened in the last 4 years. And I think Donald Trump needs to answer for January 6th. Oh, because we haven't had already 2 years worth of kangaroo court hearings led by Liz Cheney, where Republicans and Donald Trump weren't even allowed to have any representation on the panel. They had a primetime show laying out everything that they had on January 6th, and now we found they hid a bunch of evidence and then destroyed evidence after their hearings. As if Donald Trump isn't actually literally facing criminal charges over January 6th because of the trumped-up, made-up special prosecutor attack on him from Jack Smith. But no, what Alyssa Farah says, a woman who, by the way, worked for the Trump administration right up until the moment of the January 6th events. And now suddenly she's Joy Behar's best friend until Joy doesn't need her anymore. She's now saying that Donald Trump needs to be on that stage so he answers for January 6th. Boy, I would love for a lot of people to answer to January 6th. But I'll take Alyssa Farah at her main point, which is, yes, a lot of things have happened over the course of the last 4 years. I mean, I think it's worth asking Joe Biden a couple of questions about Afghanistan and seeing how he defends his record. You see, this presidential election is pretty much all about whether you want 4 more years of Joe Biden. And so the debate is really about him defending his record. And you see, this is really why they don't want him on that debate stage. I mean, partly because of the mashed potato for brains, certainly, and the inability to focus and cognitively communicate any ideas without mixing up Mexico and Egypt, without any sort of memory recall. But also because they don't want to put him in a position to have to defend the atrocities that we've seen over the last 4 years, the atrocious Biden presidency. Let's start with Afghanistan. The death of 13 service members, solely his responsibility because of his failed pullout. Also, the people that we left behind in Afghanistan. We also have a war in Eastern Europe. We have a war in the Middle East. He's now literally in the process of throwing our ally Israel under the bus by going to the UN and trying to force a ceasefire in Israel and the Gaza territories against our ally Israel's wishes. And boy, the irony of going to the UN, a group, an organization that has been found to have members of UNRWA, the UN human rights organization, actually participating in those terror attacks. And now Biden, instead of condemning the UN, he's running to the UN to throw Israel under the bus. Oh, but let's not stop there. Let's also make Joe Biden answer for the disaster at the southern border. See, they don't want him on the stage because they don't want him to face questions about what he's done in allowing over 8 million illegal aliens into this country and the crime that has come with it. While we're at it, let's ask Joe Biden about inflation and the economy and how he has stifled drilling in this country and energy independence that he was handed by the Trump administration. You see, debates are supposed to be about ideas and track records and agendas and policies. And that's the last thing the supporters of Joe Biden want. And that's why you're seeing this parade of people now coming up saying, no, there can't be any debates. Besides, there's nothing new to learn. There's nothing new to learn? Oh, there's a whole lot that's happened, definitely, since Joe Biden became president. And he should have to answer for those things, shouldn't he? So the debate continued there at the View table. Here, let's take a look.
I disagree with you, actually. And I say that because normally my gut would tell me it's good for democracy. I caveat that with, if we did not know these two men as well as we do, it would be more important for them to be debating. The problem is, for the reasons you just spelled out, Donald Trump comes on and I wish they'd put him in phone booths and cut mics after a certain amount of time, because in addition to the fact checking, he overtalks, gaslights, and everything else. So oftentimes the comparison to Donald Trump makes anyone look less than on some level. You know, like, I know he looks crazy too, but remember how he'd like come behind Hillary when she was like, and he was like always hovering. He has these like nonverbal cues that could lead some to believe, oh, he's so strong or he's this, but he just blows the whole thing out of the water. And if he hasn't debated anyone yet, the only debate I would like to see is him and Nikki Haley. If he would debate Nikki Haley, I would support that. I don't think Biden needs to, since Donald Trump has done nothing to participate in this democracy since he lost.
Hillary.
Do you ever try to follow the logic of somebody on the left like this and follow the logical trail of their thoughts, and then you realize you've gone into a dead end? So Donald Trump behaves himself atrociously on the stage. He will lie and nobody will be there to fact check him. They should be able to cut off his microphone at any given time. He hovers behind Hillary Clinton and acts like an alpha male, and that's a terrible thing. So he shouldn't be on the debate stage unless it's against Nikki Haley. Then it would be okay. Wait, I'm sorry. Which principled position did you just lay forward that we have to suspend if the opponent on the debate stage is Nikki Haley? And one must reach one of two conclusions. The first is that maybe she thinks that Nikki Haley is the only one who is equipped to be able to combat Donald Trump because Joe Biden, once again, has mashed potatoes for brains. So we'll allow Nikki Haley to do it because she'll be able to fight back on the debate stage, which I think is certainly open for question. Or, and I think this is more realistic, she's okay if Republicans are debating against each other because that hurts Republicans in the long run. And that's really what we're seeing here, because they're not news analysts and they're not political analysts. They're liberal Democrat analysts. And everything they do and everything that they say has that end in sight. Let's have Joy Behar give us the last word.
I was going to say, Hillary should have said to him, "Get away from me, you orange menace."
Yeah.
She should have said that.
She should have kicked her foot backwards.
Yeah.
And hit him where
Joe
it hurts.
Biden, I believe he said, "Shut up, man," or "Keep quiet, man."
Yeah.
So, there is that. But, the truth matters. The research shows that presidential debates have minimal, if any, influence on election outcomes.
Yes.
People don't remember it. This is like a replay of 2020. We've seen the movie, and the media does not fact check. It's almost impossible to do it.
I like the mic cutting. That's really important.
The last time a debate really worked was back in the Ice Age when Nixon debated JFK. And everybody who listened to the radio said that Nixon won the debate.
Yeah.
And if you watch it on television, they said that John Kennedy won because he was handsome, he was vibrant.
Nixon was
and
sweating
Nixon was
and he looked
swarthy with a beard and looking like a real menace.
So there you go. The last time a debate ever mattered was in 1960, and thank God our guy won because he looked better. That's the intelligent, principled, logical discussion that you get at The View every day. And that's ABC News for you. It's a beautiful thing to behold. So the narrative is set. We don't need debates. We already know who these guys are. They don't have anything new to bring to the table. Donald Trump shouldn't be platformed or legitimized anyway. And besides, debates don't matter. They haven't mattered since 1960. Although I think historians might suggest that Ronald Reagan stamping down any concerns about his age against Walter Mondale in 1984, when he said he wouldn't exploit Mondale's youth and inexperience, I think that was a pretty effective presidential debate. I think perhaps Ronald Reagan also pushing back on Jimmy Carter with his "there you go again" back in 1980 also served to help the Gipper win landslides in both of those elections. But see, they want to pretend that never happened because that was a Republican. And they hated Reagan just as much as they hate Trump. In fact, it's also the same kind of hate. Look at the things they said about Reagan. I promise you, it'll be quite familiar from what you're seeing these days against really any Republican in my lifetime. Why don't they want Joe Biden to debate? The real answer, as usual with the left, is everything they say about Donald Trump is really the truth about Joe Biden. Donald Trump will filibuster and he'll steal all the time. Well, if you actually analyze the last couple of debates between Trump and Biden, it was Biden who ended up being able to speak more than Donald Trump. The moderators tilted in his favor, not in Trump's favor. Well, they should be able to fact check them in real time. Well, they attempted actually to fact check Donald Trump. Remember when Candy Crowley fact checked Mitt Romney against Barack Obama during the 2012 debate? And in fact, her fact check was a lie. And the fact checks against Donald Trump from Chris Wallace and Kristen Welker this last time around were also lies. So they fact check. They fact check Republicans. But you know what didn't get fact checked in the last debate that I would love to revisit in 2024? This moment right here.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation at a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yep. You see, it was all Russian disinformation. That moment in the debate there where he deflected any suggestion that his son, Hunter, his brother, James, and he himself were involved in corrupt activities with foreign nations. He wrote off to being Russian disinformation and then cited 51 former intelligence people, including 5 former CIA directors, all saying that it was a Russian plant. But of course, now we know that story about Russian disinformation with 51 former intelligence officers, that story was planted by the Biden campaign. So yeah, I would love to revisit that issue on the debate stage, considering what Joe Biden got away with on the last debate stage. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you'll watch Fox News and you'll watch the 5 and you're having a good time, and then they turn to that one chair. And there was a time there when it was filled by Bob Beckel. May he rest in peace. He was entertaining, at least, and fun, I think. And then it was Juan Williams, and then it was Geraldo Rivera. And lately it's been Jessica Tarlov. And I'm thinking you're yelling back at the television a lot when Jessica gets her chance. Well, yesterday on the 5, they took up the issue of the judgment against Donald Trump in that New York courtroom and how unjust it was and how it's going to be bad for business in New York and how it's a absolute suicide for the city and state of New York to signal to major businesses and real estate developers that basic business practices are now considered fraud. And you'll be fined $300 million if you engage in those kind of practices. Well, Jessica did her best to try to make the left's case. And I want you to see how the conversation developed.
I think emotion is hot at the table, and it is not emanating from me. So since Donald Trump ran the first time, he has been making this argument. If they could do this to me, they could do this to you. The average person is not inflating their wealth by $800 million to $2.2 billion. They're not sexually assaulting women. They're not storing classified documents in the toilet. They're not fomenting an insurrection. Mar-a-Lago, you remember the documents?
Let's
focus on this case. We can do.
No, but it worries about Donald Trump. You always do that.
No, Jessica, you're doing a laundry list.
Really? You
You're
can
doing a
judge
laundry
Edgar on
list
this too.
when we're focused on one topic. We're focused on one topic.
Okay.
And yes, it does matter.
Falsifying your business records. Do you do that?
No. I'll tell you what I do, because I'm glad you asked. When you're in a contract negotiation with a company, let's say your contract is up and your company says, we want to renew your contract, and they don't give you a bump in the raise. That's the beginning. And then you come back and you go, you know what? I'm going to ask for the frickin' moon, which I always do. And I know I'm not going to get the moon, but I also know at the end of the day, they're going to see everything. I can say, I want $100 million over the next 6 months. They're going to laugh. But that doesn't mean I broke the law. It means this is what you put down in a negotiation. And as the judge said, it's all transparent. They actually see it. There is no fraud here, which is why you're bringing up other stuff.
No, it's not. I started with that. And then I said, actually, it's a pattern.
Well,
I'm sure. I gotta get Jesse in. Let's just give you the final word.
I was going to say, you obviously, with respect, Jessica, know nothing about real estate valuations, real estate development, or the IRS, or getting loans from big banks to develop skylines in New York City. Donald Trump did more for New York City than 1,000 Letitia James has done. And if you look at this history of this case, she's gone after now Cuomo, Donald Trump, the NRA, the NYPD, and she's done nothing on street crime, nothing on real white-collar crime. And then her phony friend, Alvin Bragg, if you just try to defend yourself working at a bodega or on the subway, he goes after you. That's why 160 businesses have left New York. That's why almost 1 million New Yorkers have left.
You know, whenever you get a chance to give the final word in a debate, make it as good as Jesse Waters right there. And I do like it's all with due respect, Jessica, but you absolutely know nothing about what you're talking about, with all due respect. And actually, Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, pretty much validated exactly what Jesse and everyone else on the panel said to Jessica. Here, take a look at the governor of New York celebrating the judgment against Donald Trump. Look at that smile on her face, how happy she is about a judgment against Joe Biden's political enemy. You see, this guarantees Kathy Hochul a cabinet position if Biden wins. That's how this works, you know. Here, take a watch.
I just got off the phone with Attorney General Tish James and spoke to her about how this sends a strong message that in the state of New York, business people who commit fraud and to hide their assets will be caught and prosecuted, whether you're the President of the United States, a past president and forever past president of the United States, or you're an ordinary business person. No one is above the law here in the state of New York. And I congratulate her and her effort for making sure that that is a message that is heard loud and clear, not just here in New York, but across this entire nation.
Yeah, the message is loud and clear, all right. But here's the interesting thing about what she just said. This is a great sweeping decision for anyone who wants to do business, right? That's what she just said. You fraudulently hide your assets or misrepresent your assets to a bank. And I just remind you, and our pal Kevin O'Leary is going to remind you in no uncertain terms coming up in a moment, there were literally no victims in any of this crime. The bank that has supposedly been defrauded actually got paid back every penny plus interest that they asked for. If you ask literally anyone who does business anywhere in the world with regard to real estate and with regard to business loans, this is standard business practice, what you've seen here, right? And she just said, if you do what Donald Trump did in New York, you will be treated the same way. Now, within 12 hours of that statement, there were emergency cords pulled all over the state of New York and in the governor's mansion. People were terrified at what she just said, what you just saw. And she had to come up and do damage control. Why? Because anyone who is in business knows that this was the use of a law that has never been applied the way it was just applied against Donald Trump. And what the governor just said, what you just saw her say, was that we're going to do this to all y'all who try to come to our state and do business like Donald Trump. And every major business owner went, oh my God, this is a nightmare. I thought they were just going after Trump. No, they're coming after all of us. So Kathy Hochul had to do some damage control. She showed up on the WABC talk radio and she said this Sunday night.
I know many of the business people in New York City, and by and large, they are honest people, and they're not trying to hide their assets, and they're following the rules. And so this judge determined that Donald Trump did not follow the rules. He was prosecuted, and truly the governor of the state of New York does not have a say in the size of a fine. I think that this is really an extraordinarily unusual circumstance that the law-abiding and rule-following New Yorkers who are business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different than Donald Trump and his behavior.
Yeah. So you see the attempt there. This is very extraordinary. Trump is a one-off. Trump is extraordinary. Trump is different. Trump is more corrupt than anyone else doing business. And here's the thing. Most businessmen know that's absolutely false. That's not the case at all. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinary in that not everyone is Donald Trump because not everyone is an existential threat to the political fortunes of Kathy Hochul and the Democrats who run that state. So the real message here, yes, this is an extraordinary application of the law against one man who represents a threat to our political existence, and that's why we did this. So the message to other businessmen is not that we're going to treat you the exact same way if you conduct yourself in business the way Donald Trump did. No, the message is really we're going to go after you the same way if you dare to get out of your lane and come after us politically, because we have ways of getting you, and we will. These are mafia tactics. But what do you expect? It's New York, right? Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank has been an outspoken critic of this prosecution, and he was brilliant yesterday doing the full circuit. Here he is on Fox Business, and just so you know, there's a lot of this. This is Kevin O'Leary, a businessman, talking to Neil Cavuto, a business journalist, on a business network. So a lot of this has to do with business and valuation and depreciation and all the things that are involved in real estate. But I trust you and I respect your intelligence. You'll understand this. Take a look.
Doesn't matter what the governor says. New York was already a loser state. Like California is a loser state. There are many loser states because of policy, high taxes, uncompetitive regulation. It was already on the top of the list of being a loser state. I would never invest in New York now. And I'm not the only person saying that. And here's a real-time situation. In development in real estate right now, the hottest asset class is very high-end data centers. They cost anywhere from $2.5 to $3.5 billion each. They're very expensive. They require low power. You need permits. But most of the major institutions in the world need more data centers, and that's why developers like me are doing this. Now, you need power. So New York has Niagara Falls. Normally, you'd consider that to put in one of these facilities, create 400 jobs, 5 more jobs for each of one of those for auxiliary services. I can't go to New York. So I'm going to Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia. Governor Stitt, Kevin Stitt, my staff have met with him. Governor Bergen, the same thing. Governor Justice. Those are winner states. They don't do things like this. I have to syndicate that debt and all that equity. We're talking billions of dollars here. Do you think any foreign institution or any private equity firm or any pension fund would touch New York? No. And that's why New Yorkers should be concerned. The fine people of New York should ask themselves, why are we such a loser state? How are we going to attract business? It's not just the existing businesses that are fleeing out to Texas and Florida. What about new money like this that I'm talking about, like a $4 billion data center? Not a chance I would put that in New York. Zero probability, never. And so they've got a lot of work to do to find themselves getting out of this situation. This has all occurred post-pandemic. Winner states versus loser states. Look at Tennessee right now, fastest growing city in America, Nashville. Winner state, good policy, competitive taxes. You've got to start thinking about this in the context of winners and losers. New York, mega loser state.
I do like the way New York businessmen speak, by the way. Mega loser. Loser, you're all losers. It's Trump-esque, isn't it? I wonder if this guy's vying for Secretary of Treasury. He showed up on CNN primetime last night as well and laid it out even better, frankly.
Wouldn't there be many companies who would not want to do business or loan money to people like yourself or investors if they know that they can get away with fraud and there's no recourse to protect them?
Excuse me, what fraud? This is not about Trump anymore. When
I
you
know.
get a developer that builds a building and he says it's worth $400 million and he wants to borrow $200 million from a bank, which happens every day, everywhere on earth, including every American city, every developer is an entrepreneur. They shine the light on their building and they say it's worth 400. The bank does its own due diligence, as was done in this case, because they're very good at it. The banks are very good, and they say, no, it's worth 300. We're only going to loan you 150 million. That haggling has gone on for decades. That's how it works. And then in this case, even the bank that was supposedly defrauded testified and said, we didn't lose anything. We want to do business with this guy again. We'd like to, but the judge said, no. Let's penalize this developer for $355 million. And if we're going to do that, let's penalize all the developers all across America. They've all done the same thing. All of them should go to jail, and we should stop building buildings. That's what the message is from New York. Even the governor herself is concerned about what this looks like to investors all around the world. It's not just U.S. domestic. All around the world, people are talking about what happened here. You really think people want to invest money in New York after this? How about we go somewhere else?
I think there are people who would, I don't want to cut you off, but I want to converse with you instead.
You just did.
It's only because I want to have a conversation,
you know what?
Kevin,
I respect
as opposed to just having
I respect
you tell
because
me.
you're a lawyer. You're a lawyer. You understand exactly what I'm talking about.
I got to tell you, I'm respectable for a number of reasons, Kevin O'Leary, but being a lawyer is one of those issues. But I'll tell you, when I hear your conversation, and I do want to converse with you about this point, I understand that there are legitimate concerns that were raised during the trial and will continue to be raised about who the quote unquote, who is actually bringing the suit. It wasn't the banks who were saying that we as consumers or unsophisticated feel this way. But Letitia James, the Attorney General, and I know you want to expand beyond Trump, has suggested, well, it's about making the playing field level for those who are not the major and billionaire investors, but for those who are supposed to put business records out there, want to get a loan, the idea of making sure that they have to have the same true statements included as those who have a lot more money. Is there any weight to that for you?
Well, I asked you who lost money, and I'll make it even clearer. You and I, we're developing a data center together, and I say to you, we can go to New York where this just happened. It's your money now. You're now an investor and you're taking risk. You're an entrepreneur with me, right beside me. We're together on the deal. Or I can show you Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia, where the governors actually ran businesses. Let's go there where this never happened before. They have power. They have permits. They've got legislation that's supportive of entrepreneurship. Why would we go to New York? Why take the risk? My only point is, did we just diminish the great state of New York and the great people of New York? And shouldn't they ask for better management so they don't become a flyover state? Remember, New York has the highest taxes in the country, the worst regulatory environment, and it's incredibly mismanaged. And I'm pointing out now, on top of that, you get this insanity, a victimless crime. And forget about Trump. It's not about Trump. I don't care about Trump in this. I care about America, and I care about entrepreneurship, and I care about democracy and the fairness. The judicial system is now being criticized. People are asking themselves, the bar of New York, is this judge rational to charge $355 million in a case where no one lost any money? Is that good for the people of New York? Should the people of New York wake up to this and say, what's happening to us? Why is this becoming so perverse? Why are we the focus of this injustice? And I have nothing to do with Trump. I'm not supporting Trump. I'm supporting American entrepreneurship. And New York is slowly becoming the #1 loser state in America.
All right. So let me just sum this up for you, because Mr. O'Leary there, I think for his own purposes, rhetorically, and also for its extended media exposure, needs to say, this isn't about Trump. I'm not supporting Trump. Let's not make this about Trump. And that's the flaw in this entire argument here, because you're trying to make heads or tails out of this legal issue and this business issue and have it all make sense on the face of it. And you saw the interviewer there, the host at CNN, sort of attempted to say, well, you know, the attorney general said this is really about the little guy having a fair shot. She couldn't even make that case because it's laughable. because that's not what this is. And we know that's not what this is. You see, you try to apply basic rules of logic and fundamental truths to this case and try to have it make sense, and you will always fail. If you attempt to sort of, oh, let's take Trump out of the equation. Let's just talk about, because justice is blind. The lady with the scales wears a blindfold. So take Trump out of the equation. It shouldn't matter who the defendant is. It has to do with the actual facts of the case. So let's evaluate it that way. And we're trying to make sense of it. And we're trying to make our case. And you will always fail. Because, with all due respect, Mr. O'Leary, this is 100% about Donald Trump. You can't say, I don't care about Trump, take Trump out of the question. This isn't about Trump, because none of this would have happened if it was Kevin O'Leary engaged in this business situation. None of this would have happened if it was anyone other than Donald Trump, because this only makes sense when you see exactly what it is. An attorney general who ran for office promising the voters that if they elect her, she will get Donald Trump. That's literally what she ran on. And God bless her, she fulfilled her campaign promise, because that's what her goal was. And she engineered a way to utilize a law that has never been applied in this place before in a civil judgment, which meant there wasn't a jury, and it was just one judge's decision across the board. And she found herself the perfect judge too, didn't she? And by the way, for those of you, well, this is not going to stand up and this will get overturned. If it's not going to get overturned in the New York Court of Appeals, it'll probably get overturned in the Supreme Court. There's no way that you can apply the law this way. This is completely unjust and it's wrong. And you're 100% right. But again, you're taking one important element out of the equation. This isn't about the law. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about right and wrong. This is about hurting Donald Trump in an election year. And once you realize that that's all that this is about, then it makes perfect sense. And then all the other arguments really don't matter, you see. Do you think Letitia James or Kathy Hochul or the judge care if this gets overturned on an appeal in 2026? No, they don't care. They'll still get their TV shows and their book deals and their cabinet positions. This isn't about the law, and it's not about right and wrong, and it's not about justice. This is about politics, and this is about using the court system and the law and the gavel to harm a political enemy, an enemy that must be stopped at all costs. They got their headlines. Donald Trump found guilty, fined $355 million. Boom, done. And that, plus whatever other judgments they try to work together and cobble together in cities that are really hostile to Donald Trump, New York, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. That's going to be your jury pools for the other trials. And they'll get their headlines and they'll hurt Donald Trump, because that's what this is all about. When we take up the issue of transgender activists trying to push an agenda on the rest of us, we try our best to recognize that ultimately the entire argument has to do with upending cultural and religious norms in Western civilization. There's an application of normalcy that has been part of what Western civilization has sort of embraced for millennia. And in a very short amount of time, all of it is getting twisted and upended. And we went from, the fight for same-sex marriage, where people were saying, well, listen, it's all about love, and love should win in the end. And we want to make sure that people can visit their loved ones in their same-sex relationship in the hospital when their partner is going through chemo. And right now they're not allowed to do that, or apply their Social Security benefits to them when they die. And right now they can't do that because we don't recognize their unions. And instead of figuring out some sort of governmental policy that will allow those humane ideas to be promoted, instead, marriage had to be redefined. And we've gone in a very short time from, this is just about love and love should win, to boys identifying themselves as girls and changing their clothes in a teenage girls' locker room and competing in sports against them. and taking opportunities away from them in collegiate sports and high school sports. We've gone from love should win and people should be able to visit themselves in the hospitals if they're in love with each other to your kindergartner should read a book about gender fluidity and about a prince falling in love with another prince and being in love and living happily ever after. And it's all against your rights as a parent for your child. It's all against all of these things are introduced to your children, not on your terms and not through the prism of your personal faith and morals and principles. No, because the government, through a public school or through your government institutions, they know better than you. And boy, it's been a real short trip, hasn't it? In just the last 15 years. And now we've reached a new frontier. Because transgender individuals are adopting babies or using surrogacy to have babies, and transgender women who are biological men who now present themselves, even though they are physically and in terms of body parts still male, they are presenting themselves as women and now demanding the right to breastfeed a baby with their brand new genetically altered breasts. Because remember, it's really just about love, and love needs to win. And these people need to be able to visit their loved one in the hospital if they're sick. All right, so let's take a look at the report out of London.
Now, a transgender woman's milk is just as good for babies as breast milk. That's according to a letter from the medical director at University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. The claim was made as part of a response against campaign groups. The trust referred to studies and the World Health Organization guidance, including one case which found what it called no observable effects in babies fed by induced lactation. Well, to discuss this in a bit more detail, I'm joined now by Kate Luxian, who is a research fellow in creative global health at the University College London and a lactation consultant trainee. I wanted to begin by getting your reaction to what we've heard from the hospital about this.
Of course, and it's actually not very new in terms of a concept or an idea. It's something, as someone who works in LGBT pregnancy and reproduction, that we've known for quite a while. There's studies back in the 90s that talk about the sameness of milk from the birth mother and then the co-lactating mother in terms of 10 days after birth. There's no difference seen there. And when we look at the research that's been done specifically about trans women, there's a case study that was done and published last year where they actually found that the nutritional value was either at or above the nutritional value of then the meta-analysis referent that it used. So using the example of kind of a larger sample of what we look for in breast milk, it was seen to be at least, if not higher quality.
There have been, of course, campaign groups who have criticised this letter. One policy exchange has said that the letter is unbalanced and naive in its assertion that the secretions produced by a male on hormones can nourish an infant in the way a mother's breast milk can. What is your take on that criticism?
Well, if we look at the evidence and what we can see from the science of it, the baseline of what would be in a trans mother's blood.
I mean, listen, she says trust the science. And when has science ever let us down on something like this, right? A little bit more to say about this and where this trend may lead and what I think might actually be behind a lot of it in just a moment. But here, this is actually kind of fascinating. Here's somebody who takes a different point of view over there in London on this decision.
I was looking at it objectively thinking, okay, so this is a scientific breakthrough. A bloke can basically lactate and produce milk. And then I thought, well, hang on. This is unnatural. It's almost turning into Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Almost science is almost turning into a movie. And the fact that they are giving people medical supplements. And the word there that was so pertinent was necessary. This is not necessary. There are plenty of off-the-shelf formulas that people can purchase. And the World Health Organization will quite understandably say breast is best. I get all of that. But we're talking about someone who is born a man and for all intents and purposes is a man. Now, yes, they can go through whatever gender reassignments. I get all of that and I respect them. That's their journey. But it is not necessary. And when you actually look at the chemicals that they are feeding into themselves, throwing down their gullet in order to lactate, and the possible, why are you making me smile? You
throwing down their gullet.
You really do. You really do. But this is the in a nutshell. And you know, it's not necessary.
Is it?
That's the thing. If it was necessary, it's a scientific breakthrough. Well, but I could go to Marks and Spencer's and buy some baby formula. I'm a bloke. I don't need to lactate.
That's right. And God bless GB News for that one. All right, listen, here's the bottom line here. And he makes a really important point. To develop breasts to the point where what a great conversation this is, isn't it? To develop breasts, for a man to develop breasts to the point where it is secreting a fluid that is becomes nourishment for a baby, the amount of estrogen that person would have to pump into their body to fool their body into thinking that they are a lactating woman is through the roof. And listen, I have been a dad to newborn babies, and I know what a new mother goes through to make sure that their body is in a pure state to nurse that baby. They're told they shouldn't smoke, they shouldn't drink, they should watch what they eat, because everything that they put into their body then comes out partially in that breast milk, right? I mean, that's just common sense. We know that for a fact. You go look at any book of advice for new mothers who are breastfeeding, and it tells you the kind of proper diet you should be on. And you should, suggests that you look out for the hormones that are in the foods that you're eating and drinking. You know, if you can get grass-fed organic beef and organic milk that doesn't have hormones that were shot into the cows. So they don't want you to have hormones in the food you're eating that have been shot into the cows and animals to produce that food. But it's okay if you overload your male body with estrogen to trick it into thinking that it's a lactating mother, and none of that's going to have an effect on the baby. Does that make any common sense? I know the science. Oh, I know the science. Just look at the science. Yeah, because when has science ever been infected by a political agenda? Right? But there's something else at play here, as I said. And I just want to explore it a little bit more. Because of this newest story, there's a year-old Reddit thread that has now gotten attention. And here's a posting of it. My wife is refusing to let me breastfeed our newborn. This is making me dysphoric and seems transphobic. I've been on estrogen for 2 years and transitioned after 6 years with my wife. She accepts and sees me as a woman. However, she gets very uncomfortable and cagey when I suggest sharing breastfeeding. I haven't had top surgery yet, but I read about inducing milk and how we can produce it. I feel like as a woman, I have the right to breastfeed our newborn, and excluding me from it is implying I'm not a real woman or mother. What should I say or do to make her see sense? Yeah, I've got some advice. So if you look at that message right there on Reddit, you look at the discussion that was had on GB News, and then you look at the discussion that was had with a scientist on BBC, and you see a common thread here, don't you? Nowhere in the conversation, nowhere in the science, nowhere in the articles about how a man's transgender lactating milk is just as good as a woman's. Nowhere in there is a question of what is in the best interest of the infant. What is in the best interest of the baby? This is the most selfish, narcissistic, egomaniacal agenda playing out before our eyes at an infant's expense. As I said, I was a newborn father of 4 little babies, and I witnessed firsthand the joy and wonder of the birth of these babies, and yes, the nursing of those babies, the development of those babies, and the diapers for that matter. I was a very much hands-on father. I was in charge of output. My children's mother was in charge of the input. So I did a lot of diapers. And I watched the process, and we had a very open relationship about the entire breastfeeding process. I studied it quite a bit. And I'm here to tell you, and you can read about this in whatever studies you want. You can go and look at whatever papers you want. This is an absolute fact. There is a hormonal stimulation that takes place when a baby is nursing from a mother. Now, sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's not very pleasant at all. But other times, women experience sometimes a euphoric feeling when they're nursing a baby. And this makes sense, doesn't it? Because I don't think I'm breaking any ground here, and I don't think I'm surprising anyone to tell you that breasts, both male and female breasts, are incredibly sensitive parts of the body with nerve endings that are really, really reactive to stimulation. They could be ticklish, it can be painful, but it can also give somebody a pleasurable feeling, right? When their breasts and nipple area is stimulated. And forgive me for going out on a limb here, but the narcissism and self-focus that is surrounding this agenda from men who are demanding to be allowed to have a baby suck on their nipples only makes rational sense if you recognize that these self-centered, selfish individuals are getting some kind of kick out of this. You cannot say that it's great for the baby. You cannot say that it's necessary for the baby, because you know logically that in the case of this person on Reddit, there's a woman involved and she's got perfectly good breasts, so she can nurse the baby. Job done. And you know for a fact that you can get formula and you can feed a child on bottle food. Job is done. The only reason you're injecting yourself into this process and demanding that you participate in it is for your own selfish needs and desires. And when you add to that mix the fact that there is a physical, almost sensual gratification from this process, sorry, it lays out to me an obvious truth here, that this is just one more step towards the normalization of the most evil practices of sexual deviancy, framed within the rights of an individual because they have the right alphabet letter after their identity. And it's got to be stopped. And forgive me for explicitly calling it for what it is. That's it for today. We will be back next time. But thanks for watching. And make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you like or subscribe. And if you liked any of the various segments that we did here today, in between my sneezing and coughing because I'm still fighting a cold, we'll be breaking those segments out. So if you're watching us on Rumble or on YouTube, you'll see those segments standalone, and you can share those as well on whatever social media platform you like. And we appreciate that too. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening on podcast as well. Subscribe and leave a rating and a comment if you could. It'll help us out big time. In the meantime, we'll see you next time. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.